They say every man's got a breaking point. Mine came the night the boss told me, "One job, kid. Just one. In and out." Sounded simple, too simple. That's how the devil deals, always dressed in silk and certainty. Back then, I was hungry. Not for food, nah, I'd had enough scraps in alleyways to last a lifetime, but for power. Respect. The kind you don't ask for, you take. Salvatore Moretti, our boss, he saw that hunger in me. Said it made me dangerous, said it made me useful. I believed him. I believed everything back then. It started in the back room of La Serena, his little Italian joint on the South Docks. Place smelled like garlic and gun oil. We were 4 deep around that old oak table. Me, Rico, Dom, and the boss. Sal lit a cigar, leaned back, smoke curling up like a ghost. "I got a problem, boys," he said. "And problems need solutions. Quick ones." He looked right at me when he said it. "You want to make your bones, kid? Earn your seat at this table? Then you handle this." I remember my heartbeat, steady, loud, proud. I'd been running collections, low-level muscle work, but this? This was my shot at the big leagues. One job. That's all it took to step out of the shadows. "What's the job?" I asked. Sal smiled. Cold. Slow. Like a man who enjoys watching the hook sink in. "There's a bookkeeper," he said. "Name's Victor. Used to keep our numbers clean. Now he's thinking of talking to the cops. You find him, make him disappear. Quiet. No mess. A clean job. A ghost job." Rico slapped my back. "Congratulations, kid. You're moving up." I smiled too. But somewhere deep, something twisted. I didn't want to admit it, not then, but I wasn't built for ghosts. I was built for loyalty. Still, I said yes. You don't say no to Sal Moretti. Not if you like breathing. That night, I tracked Victor to a rundown motel near the river. Room 207. I can still smell the mildew, the cigarettes, the fear. He opened the door before I could knock twice. "Please," he said. "I knew someone would come. I just didn't think it'd be you, Tony." He knew me. That was the first crack. We grew up in the same neighborhood. He used to sneak me bread when Ma couldn't afford it. And now here I was, gun in hand, sent to erase him like a bad number in a ledger. He sat down on the bed, eyes hollow. "You think Sal will let you live after this? You think you're different?" I told him to shut up, but my hand was shaking. I'd pulled triggers before, sure. But never like this. Never on someone who looked at me like I was still that hungry kid from 5th Street. He slid a photo across the table. A little girl, 5 maybe. Big brown eyes. "My daughter," he said. "She's all I got. Sal knows it. He's setting you up, Tony. After tonight, you're just another body in the river." I should have walked away. Should have put the gun down. But I didn't. I was too far gone in the dream of being someone. I pulled the trigger. One shot. Clean. He slumped forward, eyes still open. And just like that, part of me died too. I left the motel, hands trembling, heart hollow. I thought the job was done. I thought I'd earned my place. But when I got back to La Serena, Sal wasn't smiling. "You're late," he said. "Cops hit one of our warehouses tonight." Somebody talked. My blood ran cold. Victor wasn't the leak. That's when it hit me. Sal never wanted Victor dead. He wanted me dirty. Wanted me tied to a body, so I'd never crawl out from under him. "One job," he said. "Yeah. One job, and it cost me my soul." That night, I poured whiskey till the bottle bled dry, staring at my hands like they belonged to someone else. I thought about Victor's little girl. About what kind of monster I'd become. And then I made a decision. If I was gonna burn in this life, I'd choose the fire. Sal thought he made me a weapon. He forgot weapons can turn. That was the night I swore I'd change the game. Not just for me, for every man he broke. But first, I had to survive the storm he'd just unleashed. Rico showed up at my door before sunrise, knocking the way only a friend knocks. 2 quick, 1 slow, like a heartbeat. He didn't come inside. Just leaned against the hallway wall, eyes darting, coat still damp with river fog. "Sal wants you at the Serena," he said. "No." His jaw worked around the word like it was a nail he couldn't swallow. I slid the chain, stepped out, locked up behind me. "You don't bring trouble into where you sleep. Not in our line of work." On the stairs, he finally looked at me. "You did it?" he asked. "It's done." He nodded but kept his hands in his pockets, shoulders high, like he was bracing for a punch that might come from any angle. "Word is, there's heat. Warehouse B got raided. 4 guys in cuffs, 2 trucks seized. Victor wasn't the leak. Maybe he was one of them." Rico didn't believe it. He said it because that's what a soldier says when the sky is cracking and you need a story to stand under. We walked. The city felt like it had been scrubbed too hard, streets too clean, air too thin, the light stretched tight over everything. At the Serena, Dom met us at the back entrance, the scar over his eyebrow folded like a bad receipt. He patted me down, slower than usual. "Boss is touchy," he grunted. "Don't make him more touchy." Inside, Sal sat at the table with an espresso and yesterday's paper he hadn't read yet. He didn't look up when we entered. He just stirred sugar into the cup until the spoon clinked porcelain like a little bell calling the faithful. Finally he said, "Tell me a story, Tony." I told him. I kept it clean. Motel, room 207, 1 shot, no noise, no witnesses. I left out the little girl's photo. That part was mine, a shard under the tongue. He listened without blinking, then set the spoon down, lined it perfectly with the saucer. "You sure he didn't say anything extra? Cry, maybe. Beg. Confess. Nothing that matters." He smiled then, the small, white smile of a man who loves paperwork because it proves the world obeys lines. "Good. Because someone's still talking. Cops knew the gate code. They knew the shift change. That ain't chance. That's treason." Dom shifted behind me. Rico coughed. I kept my breathing steady. Sal reached under the table and came up with a small velvet pouch. He slid it across the wood toward me. "Open it." Inside was a ring. Gold, heavy, with a flattened face engraved with a ship and a laurel. The table ring. The kind you only get when you're no longer expendable. The kind that means you've crossed a river and there's no bridge back. "Welcome to the family," Sal said. "We eat heartbreak for breakfast, but we eat at the same table. Don't ever forget it." I slipped the ring on. It fit too well. A band is a chain that learned posture. After the ritual, we got practical. Sal parceled orders, sent Dom to shake down our union boys, told Rico to find a missing driver. Me, he told to sit. "I got something special for you, kid. Consider it a baptism." There was laughter in the corners of the room that didn't belong to anyone I could see. When we were alone, he leaned in close, voice soft. "You carry any ghosts out of that motel?" "I carry what I need." "Good answer." He tapped the table twice like he was checking the pulse of a body he'd just buried. "I need eyes on a cop. Detective Nina Caldwell. Organized crimes. She's asking wrong questions with the right people. You shadow, you listen, you find out who's feeding her. You don't talk. If she makes you, you run. If she corners you, you smile. You don't touch her unless I say. A cop with a name. Not just a badge number. That meant she mattered. That meant someone had put pieces on a board and we were the ones moving them with greasy fingers." Rico walked me to the alley. "Nina Caldwell," he repeated, like tasting the syllables for poison. "She doesn't play. You keep it clean." "Since when do I not?" He forced a grin. "Since you started wearing a ring." Then, under his breath, "Keep your head on a swivel. Dom's been sniffing around your route for days." "Why?" "Because Sal told him to." I tailed Caldwell that afternoon from the precinct to a battered coffee cart by the courthouse. She had a face that didn't apologize for existing. Sharp, awake, the kind of eyes that make liars stutter. She bought a black coffee and stood under a broken clock as if it were still telling time. A guy in a gray hoodie joined her. He spoke without looking at her. She didn't nod, didn't write. Just sipped. Twice, she laughed, a short, humorless burst. When he left, He tucked something into the lid of the trash can. She didn't move for 30 seconds, then walked, bumped the can, kept going. Courier dance. Clean. I circled 2 blocks and came back. The lid was already empty. Someone else had made the pickup faster than I could blink. Whoever was feeding her had a rhythm, and I'd stepped in late to the song. I followed Caldwell to a parking garage. On the 3rd level, she stopped by a dented sedan and pulled out her phone. I moved behind a pillar and pretended to smoke. Her voice carried. Yeah. He took the bait. They're paranoid. The raid rattled them. Pause. No, he's not the leak. He's a pawn. But he might turn queen if we play it right. The word queen drilled into the same place Victor's photo had cut open. Pawn. Queen. Someone else was moving me across the board. Sal, Caldwell, whoever the gray hoodie was, they all had hands in my pockets. When she hung up, she looked straight at my pillar and said, "You can come out now." I froze because sometimes freezing is all you can do when the floor is suddenly a trapdoor. She didn't draw. Didn't yell. Just opened her car door and tossed a manila envelope onto the roof. "You pick it up, you're in. You walk away, we never met." 3 seconds. I waited 4. Then I stepped out slow, hands empty, eyes curious. "You got the wrong guy," I said. "Maybe." She got in, started the engine. "Or maybe you're the only guy who can live with what he's already done." She drove off, leaving exhaust and a choice that tasted like metal. The envelope was light. Inside, photocopies of warehouse logs, a list of gate codes, and a single Polaroid, me, entering the motel, time-stamped, crooked. On the back, a single line in neat block letters. "He set you up." I burned the photo in a gutter can, watched my own face curl and blacken. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. A voice I knew better than my own breath. "You enjoying the view from the garage, kid?" "So." My spine went ice. "Just stretching my legs." "Good. Keep them limber. Tonight you meet me at St. Agnes. Confessional 3. Bring nobody." Click. Church after dark. Confessionals. Sal was theatrical when he wanted fear to feel holy. I walked the long way back, counting windows, counting exits, counting ways a body could disappear without leaving a ripple. On my block, Dom's Cadillac sat with the engine off and the lights dead. He waited until I was close to roll the window down. "Boss wants you sharp," he said. "He also wants your gun." He held out his hand. I looked at Rico's apartment window across the street. A silhouette paced behind the curtain, broad shoulders, slow steps. Watching. "Since when do we disarm our own?" Dom's smile never reached his eyes. "Since the leak got bold." "Come on, Tony. Don't make me ask twice." I gave him the piece muzzle first, so he had to take it by the slide, a small insult disguised as manners. He clocked it, said nothing, pulled away. Upstairs, Rico opened before I knocked. He locked the door, flipped a chair for me, didn't sit. "Dom took your gun?" "Yeah." Rico cursed under his breath. "Listen. There's chatter. Sal's been telling people you were seen talking to a cop by the courthouse. He told me to shadow her." "Doesn't matter. He's writing the narrative before the facts arrive. If something ugly happens, he doesn't want blood on his shoes." "You think he's going to make me the leak?" "I think he's going to make you anything he needs." Rico rubbed the bridge of his nose, then looked up. "There's more. Victor, he wasn't just numbers. He handled the trust accounts. Sal's pension slush. There's a ledger nobody's found since he vanished. If you had it. I don't. But Caldwell thinks you can get it. And Sal thinks you might already have it. That's why your ring came with a leash." I stood, every part of me ringing with the sense of a trap tightening. "I got a date with a priest," I said. "If I don't come out, burn the leash." Rico caught my wrist. "If you go alone, you're a stain on a church floor." "Then I don't go alone." He followed my eyes to the fire escape. We moved without speaking, practiced as a prayer we'd both stopped believing in. Backstairs, alley, 2 blocks through shadow. The city's veins pumped cold. St. Agnes rose from the corner like a tired giant, stone shoulders blackened by years of rain and sins. Inside, candles made small constellations in red glass. The air smelled like wax and whispers. Confessional 3 waited open like a mouth. I slid in. The screen on Sal's side stayed dark. For a moment there was nothing, no breath, no rustle, just the thud of my own heart against the wood. Then his voice, "Bless me, Father, for I am about to sin." "Make it worth my while," I said, and the screen lit with the brief glow of a match. The sulphur flared, painting a silhouette I knew better than any saint. "You were seen with Caldwell," he said. "You told me to follow her. I told you to shadow, not to cast one." He paused, like he could hear every muscle in my face tighten. "Doesn't matter. I know who the leak is. Say the name." He let the match burn to his fingers before he snapped it out. "Rico," he said. "Your friend. He's been feeding her since spring." The candlelight didn't flicker, but the floor tilted all the same. Behind me, in the pews, something moved, just one breath out of place, a leather sole on old wood. I didn't turn. If I did, there'd be no coming back from whatever I'd find. "Bring me proof tonight," Sal whispered through the lattice, voice smooth as last rites. "Or bring me his head." The lattice went dark like a shutter coming down on a bad dream. I didn't move. The confessional would held my fingerprints like a crime scene. "Rico," he'd said. "My friend." My heartbeat counted out the seconds until the church felt like it was breathing again. I pushed the door with my shoulder and slid into the nave, candles like small red eyes watching me choose what kind of man I was going to be. Rico was 3 pews back in the shadows, head bowed, hands loose, like he'd come to pray for somebody else's sins. He didn't look up when I sat. "Well," he asked. "He wants proof," I said. "Or a body." Rico breathed in through his nose, a slow drag like a man taking his first cigarette after swearing he'd quit. "Who?" "You." His head lifted. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just enough for me to see the hurt loosen something in his face. "That's a neat trick," he said. "He says it in a box where you can't see him, and now you carry it out like scripture." "He's not asking me to believe. He's asking me to deliver." "And what do you ask yourself?" I looked at the crucifix, at a dying man nailed to wood so other men could feel holy about what they were doing. I ask why he made me take off my gun before he sent me here. We walked out under the stone saints, their mouths chipped, their eyes gone. In the alley the night was honest. It smelled like garbage and wet brick and the cheap cologne of men who only wash what shows. We didn't talk until we were 2 blocks away, under a flickering street lamp the city had promised to fix last spring. "Say it," Rico said. "I don't know who the leak is," I said. "But you're not it. You sure?" "Sure enough to lose one kind of life for another." He laughed, a rough sound that tasted like tired. "Then we need to make a third kind of life, because this one's closing fast." He looked left, right, like he was reading the air for punctuation. "We set a canary." "How?" "Feed the same morsel to 3 mouths, different seasoning for each," he said. "Sal, Dom, Caldwell. See who chirps loudest." I had the envelope Caldwell left on the garage roof, minus the photo I'd turned to ash. On the last page, bottom corner, there was a number written in pencil like an apology. I'd missed it the first time, a time and a place written as coordinates. I did the arithmetic in my head. The trash can by the courthouse wasn't the only stage for that courier dance. There was another one, different rhythm. "Tonight," I said, "we write a song. We split. Rico went east to ghost Dom, watch who he spoke to when he thought he wasn't being watched. I went south, back to the river where the motel lights stitched a crooked line along the water. The clerk didn't recognize me, or maybe he did and learned long ago not to let recognition reach the eyes. I told him I'd left something in 207 and slid a bill under the glass thick enough to mean yes. The room smelled the same, stale smoke and second chances. The bedspread pattern was an old bruise. I knelt by the cheap nightstand, opened the drawer. The Gideon Bible lay there like it always does when men run out of excuses. I didn't open to a psalm. I opened to the cut, pages hollowed with a box cutter and patience. Empty. I checked the lamp. Hollow base. No. Air vent. Screws polished by fingers that weren't paid to polish. I pulled the cover. Inside, taped to the duct like a prayer note at a wall, was a key wrapped in clear tape and folded in a dry cleaning receipt. Harbor District Bank. Box 314. Someone had expected to be hunted. Someone had made the hunt expensive. I put the cover back. I wiped the screws with a handkerchief because superstition keeps you alive when logic moves too slow. On my way out, a woman in a jacket too thin for the weather watched me from the stairwell, arms folded, eyes mean. She wasn't working. She was memorizing. I tipped my hat like a man who likes to be seen, because sometimes the only way to hide is to be obvious. On the street, I dialed the number on the envelope with a burner I hadn't used yet. No ring back, no voice, just a click and a hum, like leaning your ear to a rail and hearing the train 2 towns away. "You're early," Caldwell said. "I found a key," I said. "Victor's key." "Where?" "In a verse about judgment." "Cute," she said. "Can you get the box without a tail?" "If I can't, I don't deserve what's inside. You bring me what's in there, I'll tell you who's bleeding you from the inside. Or we both die in the parking lot of a bank with good community outreach. We should stop meeting like this." She hung up. I pocketed the phone and felt for my ankle, where Dom hadn't patted. The second piece was cheap and small and mean, a last resort friend I kept because I learned young that first resort friends die first. At the harbor bank, the night guard was reading a fishing magazine under a light too bright for secrets. I waited until shift change, then went in with a face that says my money doesn't argue and my voice that says my money is never late. The clerk checked the key against a ledger with more dust than entries. The room was cold, the kind of cold that tells you the building prefers money to people. Box 314 slid out heavy. Inside was a notebook bound with twine, a roll of microfilm like we still live in a world that trusts tiny strips of plastic, and something that wasn't supposed to be there at all, a second key, smaller, stamped 9E. Apartment. Locker. Heart. On the first page of the notebook, Victor's handwriting crawled across ruled lines. Dates. Amounts. Initials. Slush funds with Saint names. Saint A. Saint R. Saint D. Saints don't need money. Men do. I snapped photos of the first 10 pages with the burner, then put the notebook back. The microfilm went in my sock. Nobody looks dignity in the eye and asks it to take off its shoes. I rewrapped the twine, slid the box home. As I stepped out of the vault, something shifted in the air. The guard's voice pitched higher, the squeal of bad rubber on tile. I walked faster. A man stepped into the lobby with the kind of stillness that only comes from aiming at things for a living. "Dom. Boss wants a word," he said. He glanced at my empty hands like a disappointed shop teacher. "No souvenirs. Just my pride. Leave it. You won't need it." His jacket bulged where mine didn't. He motioned with 2 fingers. Outside, a black sedan idled like an animal trying to be patient. As we slid in, my phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. "Warehouse B, 10 minutes, come alone." It smelled like bait. It spelled like Caldwell. Or Sal. Either way, teeth. Dom drove without music. The city peeled away in layers. Good brick, then bad brick, then corrugated bones stacked along the water. We pulled into Warehouse B's lot. Lights off, bay doors closed, no guard smoking by the dumpster. That wasn't right. That meant everyone had already decided what was going to happen to me and didn't want witnesses. "After you," Dom said, generous as a grave. Inside, the dark wasn't empty. It was crowded with things that had decided not to be seen. I walked where I wouldn't silhouette, counted 3 breathing shapes and one that breathed like a woman who's learned to make her breath sound like a man's. Caldwell. My neck tightened. 2 crews. 2 kinds of justice. 1 scaffold. A flashlight snapped on, blinding and hot. Sal's voice came through the light, detached from a body. "Isn't this cozy?" he said. "Mice, cheese, traps, tradition." "You told me the leak's name," I said. "You asked for proof. And did you bring me any?" He clicked the light off. Darkness poured back in. A second light flared from the opposite catwalk. Caldwell, outlined in starch and resolve. "Detective Nina Caldwell," she called. Hands where I can see them. Nobody needs to die tonight. Sal laughed. Kid, listen to your new priestess. Dom moved behind me. I could hear the electric whisper of his jacket as he reached. Hands, he said, close enough that his breath warmed my ear. Or I decorate this place with your thoughts. I raised them slow. People who survive learn the choreography. Tony, Caldwell said, voice steady, you have something that keeps you breathing. Slide it to the middle. The notebook wasn't on me. The film was sweating against my ankle, the second key sleeping in my pocket like a secret that would get offended if you woke it wrong. I needed one move that worked in 2 games. Rico's the leak, Sal said, conversational, like we were arguing over soccer. He sold you because he can't live with what he is. Bring me his apology, kid, and I'll clean up after you like you're my own. From the rafters, wood creaked under a weight that walked like someone who used to be my brother. Rico was up there. He had a rifle built for distance in hands made for bringing things closer. He had a clear shot at a man who'd taught us to look at mirrors like we were praying. Don't, I said, to the dark, to the ceiling, to the boy in us who loved easy answers. Choice time, Dom hissed. Boss or cop? Family or cage? Third door, I whispered. I dropped to one knee like I was going to pray. My hands went toward the floor. Dom leaned in to grab my wrist. I came up with the ankle piece and fired once without thinking, because thinking gets you killed when the man behind you wants to make a necklace out of your spine. The shot cracked the bay quiet wide open. Dom's grunt was wet and surprised. He fell against me, heavy, and I let him go like a habit I'd finally kicked. Lights snapped on in strips, the warehouse blinking awake. Men yelled from both sides, the chorus ugly and off-key. Caldwell shouted, "Police!" and somebody answered with bullets because that's how men talk when their mouths aren't worth trusting. I slid behind a pallet stack, crab-walked toward the shadow of the forklift, heart-banging messages my brain couldn't open fast enough. Rico fired once and the overhead light exploded, raining glass like fat snow. Sal's light went wild, swinging, then steadied on me. "You just chose, kid," he said, cold as the river. "And you chose wrong." He stepped out then, finally visible, immaculate, amused, carrying a pistol like a scepter. Around him, our boys fanned into a crescent. Behind them, Caldwell's team ghosted between columns, trying to make geometry out of chaos. I held up both hands again, the ankle gun cooling at my foot like a lizard. "You want proof?" I shouted. "Victor's ledger exists. You bury me, it surfaces. Names, dates, charity accounts, judges with saints' initials. It hits daylight and your empire learns to breathe water." He smiled at that. Not the small white smile. A bigger one, tired at the edges. "You think I'm afraid of daylight? I think you're afraid of the little girl who grows up and reads what her father risked his life to write." Something flickered then, a memory taking his face hostage for the length of a heartbeat. He gestured with the gun. "Bring him," he told the nearest soldier. "We finish this in the freezer where sound dies." A shadow peeled off the stack to my right, too quiet to be a cop, too thin to be one of ours. The woman from the motel stairwell. She raised her sleeve just enough for me to see the stamp on her wrist, 9E inked thick. Not a tattoo. A reminder. A message. She mouthed it, "Key." Then the freezer door banged open at the back, and the air rolled out like a grave had exhaled. Sirens bloomed somewhere close, multiplying like rumor. Everyone pivoted at once, guns, eyes, intentions, like a flock deciding it had been birds long enough. I took the breath I'd been saving for when I needed to become someone else and used it to do the stupidest, truest thing I've ever done. I turned my back on Sal and ran toward the cold. Cold knifes you clean. It doesn't bruise, doesn't bark. It just bites and waits. I hit the freezer door shoulder first, and the world turned white breath and metal breath and the smell of old fish that had learned to keep secrets. The rubber flaps slapped behind me, and the noise of men with agendas died like a radio pulled from the wall. I slid on frost, caught myself on a rack of empty crates, and kept moving deeper until the racks thinned and the light gave up pretending it worked. The dark in there wasn't black. It was blue, the color of blood that's forgotten it's supposed to be red. Somewhere behind me the door shoved open again and boots squealed on ice. One set fast, two sets cautious. I cut left, fingers dragging along corrugated wall, counting seams, mapping the cold with my hands. At seam 9 the metal sounded different when I knocked it, hollow with an echo like a pocket. I pressed my shoulder to it, and it bowed just enough to tell me it wasn't wall at all. A panel. Tony. Sal's voice bowled in and rolled around the racks like thunder looking for a place to hit. Don't embarrass yourself. Come be forgiven. I laughed because he expected me to be scared of warmth when cold was the first honest thing I'd met all night. My breath fog marked the panel. There, bolted into the frame, a small oval cutout. I fished the second key from my pocket, the one stamped 9E, and fed it to the metal. It turned with a stingy click, and the panel sighed inward to a crawlspace that breathed a draft from somewhere far away. You hear that? Dom would have said once upon a time. That's your luck growing legs. But Dom was cooling on a concrete floor outside. I put my hand on the threshold anyway and thanked him for teaching me how to tell when a door didn't want to be a door anymore. I slipped in. The panel whispered shut and my world became a wind tunnel no wider than my shoulders. I belly crawled through dust that tasted like freezer-burned cardboard and secrets. Pipes above me sang a low song. Sirens outside harmonized from a distance. The crawlspace took a hard right, then a shallow grade up, then down again, like a river looking for the old bed it used to trust. Behind and above, fists hit the panel. A muffled curse. Then the squeal of a crowbar. I pushed faster, elbows chewing rug burn into the cold dust, shin scraping bolt heads, socked ankle tender where the film rode my bone like a coin under the tongue. 10 yards. 20. Somewhere ahead, light. Not much. Enough to make shadows. I came out in an ice room that didn't belong to this building. No racks. No crates. Just a coffin of frost and a metal door spray-painted with a saint's halo, Saint R. Victor's ledger had saints. Sal's money had saints. The door had one too. And next to the handle, stamped small enough to miss until you're starving for miracles, 9E. I tried the key. It turned like we'd practiced. The door opened on a stairwell lit by prison bulbs. The cold eased as I went down, replaced by damp. The air smelled like tidewater and pennies. After 20 steps, the stairs gave out onto a tunnel cut through the warehouse's concrete belly. Old storm drain. New sins. It ran toward the river, a black vein with a steel grate lip at its mouth. Halfway to the grate a shape peeled off the wall and made itself a person. The woman from the motel, hands raised just high enough to show they were empty. In that light she looked older and younger than she had on the stairs, eyes ancient, mouth stubborn. Her jacket was still too thin for the weather. Some people wear their punishments like coats. You're late, she said. You're everywhere. Not everywhere. Just where I can afford to be. She tipped her chin at my pocket. Did you figure the key out, or did someone have to spell it on your palm? You wrote it on your wrist. Sometimes the only way a message gets through is if you write it where you can't look away. She stepped closer. Name's Mara. Tony. You're bleeding. She wasn't wrong. My palm had a slice, my knuckles were meat, and Dom's last moment lived furiously on my shirt. She didn't flinch. You got the film? I didn't answer. She laughed once, softly. If you didn't, you wouldn't have made it here. Men without reasons die up top. She walked past me, tapped the grate with the toe of her boot. This lifts. River's low. There's a culvert under the next lot. You get to it, you get 5 minutes of nobody. After that, this place will be stuffed with uniforms who have decided you're the villain they can afford to catch. Who are you to Victor? Det, she said. And daughter. The cold found my lungs again. The girl in the photo. Not so little now. She kept her eyes on the grate because looking at me would make it real, and we both didn't have time for that. He left me pieces. Keys. Routes. Names that are not names. You're the first one to read them without asking for your cut. I haven't been asked yet. You've been asked your whole life. You just started hearing the question. Above us, the tunnel breathed boots. The crowbar had won. Sal's men would find the panel, find the crawl, find the empty room and the open door. Mara shoved her fingers under the great lip and set herself like a dockworker. I joined her. Together we lifted. It protested, then yielded, iron complaining through a grudge. River air flooded in, iodine and night. You got a boat? I asked. Feet. She grinned. Best kind. They don't explode when a bullet meets their feelings. We slid into the mouth, water lapping at ankles, then shins. The culvert ran low but wide, a throat that didn't care if you made it out. We hunched, splashed, kept our eyes on the rectangle of darkness that meant outside. Halfway, a flashlight beam combed the tunnel behind us. Voices bounced. One of them was Sal's. Come. Patient. You run and run, he said, sounding like a bedtime story told by a man who steals your sleep, but Rivers circle back. Does he always narrate like that? Mara asked. He thinks he's a priest. He's a butcher who learned Latin. We dunked under a pipe strung low across the ceiling. I came up coughing, the river plugging my throat with cold coins. On my ankle the film went colder, heavy as a choice. We hit the mouth and slid onto rocks slick with algae. The culvert spit us behind a stacked wall of pallets by the adjacent lot. The sirens had multiplied until they were almost music. Red-blue washed the undersides of gulls as they lifted, complaining. Across the water, downtown pretended it didn't recognize our names. Mara pointed to a slit in the fence where years and poverty had reached an agreement. You go that way, she said. You'll hit Fulton. Caldwell has a dead drop in the second trash can outside the bodega. Leave her the microfilm. She's not clean. No, Mara said. She's dirty in the way people get when they're trying to survive a clean system that never was. But her dirt doesn't stink like Sal's. She won't sell a ledger to buy a yacht. She'll sell a ledger to buy a conviction and call it justice. She looked at me finally. And you? What do you buy? Time. For who? I didn't answer because I didn't know yet if the honest answer was me, or Victor's ghost, or a kid I'd killed inside myself a long time ago. The fence hissed as we pushed through. On the other side the lot yawned, empty except for a forklift asleep under a tarp. I stopped. Mara kept walking. Where do you go? I asked. Room 9E, she said. The number's not just a keyhole. It's an address. She tapped her temple. Victor was cute with patterns. 9th building, east side, 9th floor, door E. He left me maps that pretend to be prayers. I should come. You shouldn't, she said. Because Sal wants you to. He's telling 2 stories right now. In one, you die running. In the other, you live and lead him to what he can't afford you to hold. She shrugged. Don't make him a prophet. We split. My shoes wrote water on the asphalt as I ran low between dead trailers and living shadows, cutting toward Fulton. Behind me, a door slammed like a judge agreeing with himself. Ahead, a neon sign for the bodega blinked open OPE, undecided. I hit the can, popped the lid, and found the false bottom by feel. I slid the film into the slot and left the slot the way I found it, except heavier. Hands, a voice said to my left. I went still. Caldwell stepped from between the soda crates, ponytail damp with mist, gun low, eyes higher. You look like a man who learned to swim, she said. Your timing's bad for compliments. She nodded at the can. Did you bring me the weather? It's raining names. She checked the can, fast hands, faster eyes, then slid the lid back. Relief didn't show on her face. Cops don't get to look relieved in front of suspects. You killed Dom, she said, not a question. He wanted to redecorate my brain. Moretti. Preaching. We have a minute before his sermon finds an audience. She stepped closer. You ready to help me put him on a pulpit he can't step down from? Why? Because you already chose, she said. At the motel. At the freezer. In the tunnel. You chose which ghosts you can live with. What if I'm just choosing the way I die? That too. The bodega light burned the dew into little stars on her jacket. Her eyes cut to the street, then back. Tomorrow morning, she said. St. Helena parking garage, top level, 9 sharp. You bring me proof that Rico isn't the leak. In return, I give you the name that started this. The person whispering in Victor's ear before he hid the ledger. The one Sal is scared of. She held my gaze. We're not going to get 7 chances. Tires hummed. 2 black sedans turned onto Fulton, smooth and slow. Caldwell stepped backward into shadow. Go, she said. We were never here. I went. Past the bodega, past the mural of a saint with her eyes scratched out, past the life I had told myself I wanted. The city's breath condensed on my face and made me feel born and drowned at the same time. As I cut through the alley toward the L tracks, my phone buzzed. Unknown, you run nice. Meet me where the river remembers. Come alone. I deleted it. Another buzz immediately. New number. Don't go to St. Helena. It's a box. The leak sits in the choir. I stopped under the tracks where the metal sings to itself. The 2 messages glowed like opposite prayers. Somewhere above, the first morning train rolled into its first bad idea. My hands shook, and not from the cold. I thought about Mara walking toward a door labeled with a letter people forget, about Caldwell standing in a puddle of red-blue light and calling it a plan, about Rico pacing his apartment with a rifle and a guilt he didn't own. The third message came in without a number at all, just text bare as a confession. You want to change the game? Stop playing on their board. Meet me at 9E at midnight. Bring fire. I looked up into the dark that hangs under cities and wondered which god answers when you call all of them at once. Then I started moving, a man with no gun, 1 ring, and more keys than he deserved. Midnight smells different. It's quieter, sure, but that's not it. It smells like every bad decision finally agreeing with itself. Building 9 on the east side had a brick face that looked tired of lying. 9th floor, door E, painted the same beige as 1,000 apartments that never made a memory. I knocked once. The peephole winked. The door opened. Mara stood there with a candle in a glass jar like a saint who'd learned to swear. You brought fire? She asked. I held up a Zippo and a plastic grocery bag that clinked. Kerosene and hope. Both spill easy, she said, and let me in. 9E was a room built from the kind of patience that keeps people alive. No TV. A card table with a manual typewriter. Telephone hooked to a recorder. Corkboards on 2 walls, string, pins, faces, receipts. In the galley kitchen, a coffee pot that could double as a weapon and a single mug that said, "Do not trust men who don't tip." She tapped the recorder. Victor's voice is on this. Not confession. Insurance. We sat. She hit play. Tape hiss, then Victor, tired and careful. If you're hearing this, somebody died. Maybe me. Maybe you. Paper shuffled. A second voice came in. Tinny, official, the kind of voice that speaks in memos even when nobody's taking notes. Harlan Reeves, Mara said. Captain. Organized crime. His mother runs a church choir charity. They sing. He steals. On tape. Reeves, bored. If Moretti insists on keeping product in B, I can't hold my boys off anymore. Give me C for a week and I make a show raid that hurts the right people. Victor. They'll know. Reeves. They'll think Dom sang. Or the kid. You have your ledger. Put their initials where I point. We both live through Christmas. Chairs scraped on the tape. A third voice, smooth and smug, slid in like oil. DeSanto. Sal's lawyer priest without the collar. We don't say names in rooms, Captain. We say letters and prices. I felt my hands go cold in a warm room. Warehouse B wasn't a lucky hit. It was choreography. Dom didn't squeal. He just died loud enough to cover the song. And Caldwell? If Reeves ran the show raid, he'd know her questions before she asked them. The leak sits in the choir, Rico had texted. The choir wasn't a church. It was a charity with a donor wall tall enough to hide a captain's conscience. I paused the tape. How many copies? 3, Mara said. 1 here. 1 with a reporter who doesn't like me but hates liars more. 1 in a locker that'll crack like an egg if anybody but me holds the key just so. She watched my face. You were going to St. Helena in the morning. I was going to walk into a box and call it a plan. You still can. Bring flowers. I laughed, and it felt like breaking a bad tooth. "Caldwell's not dirty." "No," Mara said. "She's being walked. Reeves feeds her crumbs and calls it cooperation. She'll hang you without meaning to, then cry about the system while the system waters her badge." I lit the Zippo. Flame ate the dark carefully. Victor's ledger puts Reeves' choir on Sal's payroll and Sal on half the city's. We put this in sunlight and everybody goes blind. "Not if they're wearing sunglasses," she said. "You want change. You need heat, not light." "Bring fire," the text had said. We built it. Not Molotovs, though the bag had what you'd expect, and we lined two up on the sill like old friends waiting to be introduced, but a dead man's choir of our own. Mara rolled out a battered laptop and a cracked phone. She pulled a cord from a hole in the wall that looked like nothing until you knew it, then it looked like the only artery that mattered. "Victor tapped the phone line to the church charity," she said. "They share a basement with a youth center. He paid for the center. The choir paid for the safe." She set a timer script, ugly code like a curse. At 9:17 a.m., unless a password sang true, every recording and image would bounce to 5 inboxes. A reporter who owed her a favor he didn't want to acknowledge, a councilwoman who hated Sal enough to pretend to like poor people, a union boss who'd stopped being brave when his second grandchild was born, and, for spite, Caldwell's work email and the tip line Reeves pretended somebody answered. "When the tide turns," she said, "it turns everywhere or it doesn't turn at all." I printed 3 pages from the ledger, names reduced to letters, but the dates and the deposits and the Saint code names made it a symphony. I folded them into my jacket. I texted Caldwell from one burner. Change of plan. St. Helena is a box. Choir boy built it. Meet where the pigeons don't judge. High Street Bridge, 8 a.m. 2 minutes. Bring no one. Then I texted Sal from another. Ledger is a fairy tale. Proof lives with me. Reeves will eat you. I'll trade a page for Rico's life. 7 a.m. La Serena back alley. Come alone if you remember how. I wasn't going to be at either place. I needed everyone to bump heads without me there to be the helmet. "Rico?" Mara asked. "I tell him nothing," I said. "If he shows at either, he dies honest." She nodded. "Good. If he's as loyal as you think, he'll go where his death does the most for you." "Comforting. You don't hire comfort in this line of work," she said. "You rent it by the hour and tip badly. We ate cold pizza that wasn't ours." Mara told me about Victor teaching her not to trust any door that opened the first time, about how he used to count steps in every hallway and put the number in a song so he could hum the escape without looking scared. I told her about the first time Sal put a hand on my shoulder and I mistook pressure for love. We didn't talk about Dom because talking makes ghosts sit down between you and reach for the last slice. At 2:11 a.m., the hallway put a new sound under its shoes. Not Sal's boys. Too quiet. Not cops. Too sure. Reeves has men who dress like inspectors and move like regret. Mara killed the candle with a pinch and we stood in a darkness we'd earned. The lock turned once, twice, paused like it had been told to be polite. I slid the Molotov into my hand and kept it low. The door cracked, then stopped against the chain. A gloved finger snuck in, feeling, and found nothing but air and a draft that carried a whisper of kerosene back to its owner. The finger went still. "Mr. DeLuca," a voice said softly, using a name I hadn't worn since I was nobody anybody wanted. "Building management. We have a leak." Mara smiled in the dark. "They always tell the truth when it doesn't help you," she breathed. A second key scratched the chain. Whoever had it knew enough to bring tools. They didn't know Mara replaced the chain plate with one that split to a hinge. She grabbed the inside tab, tugged. The chain fell without sound. She stepped back. We stepped sideways. The door opened and 3 men in work jackets eased in with the grace of men who've broken more doors than they've paid rent. The first one had a throat too clean for a plumber. The second had cop shoes dressed as boots. The third had eyes that didn't blink at candles or guns. "Reeves' choir." I breathed out. "You boys sing off sheet." "Captain sends apologies," the first said. "He says some files went missing from a youth program. He's very community-minded." "Tell him we found them," I said and lit the Molotov. Time slows for glass. It wants to remember being sand. I tossed low toward their feet. It kissed tile and broke with a sigh. Fire crawled up their pants like an old lover with new ideas. They yelled like men who still want to live. We ran through the kitchen, through the fire escape door that stuck on cold nights, down into metal that shook like it believed in us only when we were light. Below, a van idled, wrong color, right purpose. I looked at Mara. She shook her head. Not ours. We dropped to the 7th, slipped through a laundry room that smelled like bleach learning to forgive stains, and hit a hallway that bent twice before it let you choose a stairwell. Boots pounded above, boots pounded below. Fire alarms found their voice, and the building woke into a chorus of complaints and doors and babies who couldn't tell sirens from lullabies. On the 2nd floor, I shoulder-checked a maintenance closet. Inside, a breaker panel with tape that said NO in 3 languages. Mara ripped it and killed the lights for floors 1 to 3. We took the stairs blind. At the alley door, she stopped me with a hand to the chest. "You go south," she said. 2 blocks. You'll hit a locksmith with a dog that doesn't bark for saints. Inside, behind the pegboard, there's a metal drawer with a red ribbon. Victor left you something that isn't a pardon but feels like one. You. I head north, she said. Reeves's men can count, and I owe someone a door slam. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say the kind of thing men say when courage tries on stupidity. The alarms argued louder. She pushed the bar. Winter air slapped us awake. We sprinted opposite ways, the alley splitting our futures like a wishbone. I found the locksmith by its sign, a key the size of a coffin swinging on a squeaky chain. The dog lifted its head, saw whatever part of me wasn't worth alerting anybody about, and went back to dreaming. Inside, the glass counter had dust that had opinions. The pegboard wore keys like medals. I slid the board aside, and there it was, a little gray drawer with a red ribbon tied sloppy like Victor had let a child do it so he wouldn't trust it too much. Inside, a flash drive in a plastic sleeve, a phone with a single contact, and a folded note that said, in Victor's hand, "If you're reading this, you didn't choose safety." Good. Safety is a small room where men die politely. Reeves is the leak. Caldwell is a compass with a bent needle. Use her, don't lean on her. Sal will make you kill what you love to prove you can be loved. Don't. If you want to change the game, set the board on fire and play in the ash. The phone buzzed in my palm before I could breathe the last line. Unknown, your 2 minutes at St. Helena just got longer. Reeves moved the box to the choir loft. Sightlines, kid. Bring something that sings. I stared at the words until they stopped being letters and started being a dare. Outside, sirens braided themselves into a rope the city used to pull itself through another night. My jacket felt heavier where the ledger pages warmed my ribs. I thought about Sal in a back alley with a gun and a story, about Reeves in a choir loft with binoculars and a god, about Caldwell on a bridge counting pigeons and not noticing the shadow that counts her. And I thought about Mara climbing into a noise she might not come back from, because sometimes the only proof you weren't born a coward is the bruise on your back where you didn't run fast enough. I pocketed the drive, the phone, the note that told me my worst fear in a voice that made it feel like a plan. Then I lit the Zippo again, held it under the sprinkler head until the glass bulb cried enough and the rain came, drowning the shop in a baptism nobody asked for. Alarms would bring firefighters. Firefighters would bring questions. Questions would bring cameras. Cameras would bring light. Heat, I reminded myself. Not light. I killed the flame, stepped back into the alley, and started toward the church where men hid in music when knives felt too honest. St. Helena sits on a corner that used to mean forgiveness. At dawn it just looked tired, stone sweating, stained glass holding onto the night like a drunk clinging to his last lie. The pigeons hadn't clocked in yet. The city's first buses sighed up the avenue. I went in through the side door like a man sneaking into his own funeral. Churches are loud when they're empty. Wood breathes, pipes settle, old heat argues with new cold. I moved up the transept, past the candles people lit for problems too complicated for cops, and clocked the angles. The choir loft had good sightlines like Rico said, arched cutouts, rail high enough to hide behind, the organ a fortress of wood and brass. Somebody had laid out a box in shadows, camera on a tripod, long lens, mic on a stick. Reeves liked to perch. He'd be up there with binoculars and a conscience that kept office hours. I slid into the second confessional, Not because I had anything left to confess, but because the wood remembered secrets, and secrets feel braver when they sit where other secrets have warmed the seat. I pulled Victor's phone. One contact. No name, just a cartoon sun. I pressed it. 3 tones, then a voice that didn't bother with hello. "You late, kid." "Rico." "You figured the loft," he said. "Good." Reeves has 2 men on the south balcony, one in the bell tower with a view to the alley. Caldwell's walking in blind. She thinks she's meeting you on the bridge. Reeves moved her without telling her he moved her. Classic. Sal. 5 out back. He's not inside yet. DeSanto is. He's kneeling like he's got a deal with God. He doesn't. "You in?" "Shadow," he said. "You won't see me unless I decide you need to." "Did you send me those messages?" "I sent the ones that kept you moving," he said. "And the one that told you not to kill what you love to prove you can be loved." "You read it." "It was Victor." He exhaled. "Same handwriting." The nave door whispered and Caldwell stepped in wearing civilian clothes that tried to pretend they were Sunday best. No backup. Her hair was damp from the mist, her eyes bright like a knife that's tired of being careful. I watched her see the camera in the loft and decide it was for a wedding that wasn't happening. Her phone buzzed. She checked the screen, frowned, slid it away. Reeves' leash tugged. She walked down the main aisle to the front pew and sat like she was just a woman with a heavy morning. My burner vibrated. Unknown, front door in 2. Choir in 1. I left the confessional and ghosted up the side stairs. The organ pipes towered like a city skyline. Between pipes, the choir loft opened to the nave in a wedge of darkness. Reeves stood there, big shoulders under a suit that didn't want to be in a church. He rested weight on his elbows at the rail and looked through glass at Caldwell like a zookeeper watching an animal he raised himself. Next to him, DeSanto whispered in a voice that made the rafters feel sticky. "Let her sit 2 minutes," Reeves said. "Then we call." Bridge moved. She comes up. Camera gets her with the kid. Sal walks in on cue. Everybody in one picture. Judge loves pictures. "Smile," DeSanto said. "Make the paper pretty." I slid behind the organ case, close enough to see the pores in Reeves' shaved jaw when he turned his head. His men on the south balcony were silhouettes with scopes that drank light. The bell tower man coughed once, then remembered to be a statue. "Heat, not light," Victor had written. I pulled the last Molotov and held it for the wait. The timer in 9E would trip at 9:17 unless a password sang. It was 8:03. I had 74 minutes to either end a world or make a better one burn. The side door thumped. Sal came in flanked by 2 boys with barbershop hair and hollow eyes. He tipped water at the font like he'd earned it and walked center aisle like a king who didn't mind praying on his way to the chopping block. When he got to Caldwell's pew, he didn't sit. He stood 1 step back and said, "Where is he?" "Who?" she asked, bored. If she was scared, she'd taught her voice not to care. "You dragged me across town for this, Captain?" Reeves smiled without his mouth. He reached for his phone. I let the bottle kiss the stone floor by the pipe and let the Zippo do the rest. Fire flared like a hymn nobody had practiced and heat rolled up into the loft fast, greedy, honest. The first lick touched the organ case and me and I moved because skin knows what brains argue about. The camera on the tripod stuttered in the heat shimmer. "Fire!" Someone yelled from the side aisle like the word had a fuse in it. People say churches are safe from fire because stone doesn't burn. They forget pews do, and lacquer, and everything people bring in with their aching bodies. The alarm lagged a beat, then went full throat. Sprinklers hissed from the nave, but old churches don't like modern plumbing and St. Helena had spent its budget on a roof that didn't leak on Christmas. Water spat and then lost interest. The smoke didn't. Reeves swore and grabbed his case. DeSanto reached for the camera. I kicked it off the rail. It cartwheeled into the aisle 2 feet from Sal and died against the stone with a kind of crunch that means the memory card bit its tongue and swallowed it. Caldwell stood. Reeves' men on the balconies adjusted aim and then realized aim wasn't going to matter if smoke made their eyes cry and their lungs argue. I stepped out from behind the pipes into the slice of light and gave Reeves the smile you give a man you're already done fearing. "Bridge is closed," I said. Show moves to the street. He raised his weapon with the slow, deliberate care of a man who has never had to hurry. You should have taken your promotion, kid, he said. Now you're a story I tell at fundraisers. Down below, Sal stepped left, putting Caldwell between him and whatever this was going to be. You brought cops and cameras into my church, he said to me like a father asking a son if he crashed the car. The smoke reached him and softened his voice. He lifted a handkerchief to his mouth. Even kings cough. Your church, Caldwell said, gaze jumping between us, up to the loft, back. Funny, the deed says Diocese of St. Helena. The choir owns the basement, I said. Ask your captain about their donor wall. Reeves didn't blink. You hit dumb, kid. And loud. Loud's the point, I said. Heat, not light. You like deals backstage. I dragged the stage into the show. Sirens approached, fast, certain, angry. Not the kind that loiter. Fire trucks bully when they're in a mood, and this one was. The bell tower man said into his wrist, "We're hot," which is what men say when they mean the plan lost its coat and everyone can see its bones. Reeves leaned in, voice tight. You think you can burn your way to a home? You don't have one. Not with Moretti. Not with me. Not with your little cop who thinks every rule has a loophole and every loophole has a heart. Good sermon, I said. Here's mine. At 9:17, unless I sing a word that only one man knows, tapes and ledgers drop into inboxes that don't owe you anything. You shoot me, we all get to read our names in funny fonts. You bluff like a card with no suit. I pulled the folded pages from my jacket and tossed them over the rail. They spun lazy as angels and slapped the nave floor near DeSanto's shoes. Sal bent, picked one, squinted through smoke at dates and numbers and Saint initials that rhymed with men he knew too well. He looked up at Reeves, and for the first time since I'd known him, something like respect fell out of his eyes and broke on the tile. You stupid, crooked choir boy, Sal said softly. The side doors exploded inward under axes and authority. Firefighters fanned in, smoke eating their edges, orders sharp, hoses alive. Behind them, uniforms stacked in a pyramid came to watch each other pretend they were in charge. Cameras. Not yet. But outside, news vans were already picking their best angles. I could feel it like weather. Reeves measured the distance between a decision and a career. He holstered. Clear the building, he told his men, which sounds like mercy and smells like retreat. DeSanto went pale. Captain. Now, Reeves said, and the word hit like a baton. They melted into smoke. The bell tower man decided to be a bird and went up instead of out because some men can't help but climb to their own fall. Caldwell didn't move. Her eyes climbed the aisle to me. You did this. I did not put a choir in your basement, I said. But I did bring heat. Sal looked at me, then at her. You look like a woman who lost track of her maps, he told Caldwell. Captain's going to draw you a new one. Don't read it. She ignored him and shouted up, If there's a word you're supposed to sing, sing it now. It's not for you, I said. And it's not for him. I tapped my chest. It's for the part of me that thinks you can fix a house by painting the door. Firefighters ushered parishioners I hadn't seen, in the side pews, up front, out between blue tape and authority. A nun grabbed a relic like it owed her rent. Someone yelled about smoke inhalation. The choir loft filled with a soft ash that made the stained glass saints look older. Footsteps found the access stairs behind me, soft and correct. I didn't turn. Rico's voice came low. You got a minute, he said. Reeves pulled his boys. Sal's bleeding threat out the front of his face. We can take either head but not both. Dom is dead, I said. Mara is running north with men who count. Victor's note says if I kill what I love to prove I can be loved, I end up with nothing but applause. Tony. Tell me Reeves' word. Silence. Then, Victor never told me. He told his kid. He said he wouldn't put that weight on my mouth. A beat. She'll be here. As if the city had been waiting for his line to cue her entrance, a figure broke from the smoke at the south transept, coughing, jacket too thin, eyes stubborn. Mara. She moved like someone whose body had learned to make do with less air than it deserved. A uniform grabbed for her, she ducked and slid under a rope. She saw me and didn't smile because we were past smiles. She lifted a hand and drew a letter in the air. An M. Then another. M. Then a mouth shape, ah. Not a word. A note. Password's a pitch, Rico breathed. Cute. It's a choir, I said. They don't think in words. They think in sound. Down below, Reeves was almost to the side door when he looked back and saw Mara and remembered to hate the poor. His hand twitched toward his jacket like a man scratching an itch his doctor told him would kill him if he kept it up. Sal saw the twitch and smiled because some instincts don't retire. He stepped into Reeves' path with the easy grace of a man who's had men step out of his path his whole life. For a heartbeat they were close enough to be brothers. Then they weren't. Sing it, Rico said. Before the city decides for us. I looked at Mara and felt the way air bends when it goes around fire. She put 2 fingers to her throat and hummed, low and pure, the note somehow steady in chaos. A. She took it up a step. B. Up again. C. When she hit E, something in me clicked like a key finding a home. I pulled Victor's phone, mic live, and sang that note back into it like a man who wanted to live long enough to hear it again. The timer in 9E heard me. Somewhere across town, Code slipped a noose back onto the hook. The bomb became a clock again. I closed my eyes and let the relief feel like pain. When I opened them, Reeves was gone into smoke and law. Sal stood in the aisle, looking up at me the way I had always wanted him to once, like I was more than a pair of hands. It lasted 1 breath. Then his face reset into the mask he wears to sleep. This ends today, he said. No, I said, feeling the ash settle on my tongue like a sacrament. This changes today. The fire cap yelled at us to move our poetry outside. Caldwell climbed the first steps toward the loft because she can't help running toward fires and bad decisions. You're under arrest, she said, out of breath, not meaning it yet. For what? I asked. For being the only one who knows where the bodies are and not telling me fast enough. Rico's hand landed on my shoulder. We gotta go, he said. Where? Where the river remembers, he said, echoing Sal's text because irony likes us. Mara has a boat we don't have to believe in to make it float. Behind Caldwell, in the smoke, DeSanto coughed a prayer. Behind Sal, in the door, a camera lens blinked awake. And above us, in the rafters, the bell tower man remembered gravity. We moved. The world moved back. And somewhere between the first step and the last, I realized I wasn't running away anymore. I was running at something with my hands open and empty, ready to catch whatever fell that wasn't meant to break. The river wore mourning like a bruise, purple, swollen, promising weather with its mouth shut. Mara waited under the pilings with a skiff that looked like it could keep a secret if you didn't load it with lies. Rico and I slid down the riprap, ankles arguing with loose rock, lungs still full of St. Helena's leftover hymns. Get in, she said. We're running out of places that don't recognize us. We pushed off. The skiff nosed into current and let the tide do the arithmetic. Behind us the city blew steam and excuses. Ahead, fog. The kind that edits mistakes. Rico handed me Victor's phone. Timer's sleeping, he said. But it sets itself if you don't tuck it in again before dusk. Good, I said. Fear keeps lazy men honest. Mara aimed us toward an inlet where the pilings rot slower. We've got 10 minutes of nobody, she said. Then the river puts names on everything. In 10 minutes, Rico said, we choose a king to bury. I watched the city slide. Sal's docks to port, Reeves' precinct to starboard, both pretending they were built from different kinds of stone. We don't crown either, I said. We take the board. Rico snorted. We don't take boards. Boards take us. Mara cut the engine. Let current do the last footwork. We light it then, she said. Ash makes honest games. We tucked under a low bridge where gulls curse in their sleep. I pulled the ledger pages and the 3 Polaroids we'd printed from the microfilm. Grainy shots of donation ledgers, the choir basement safe, DeSanto's hand next to a stack of envelopes with Saint stamps. Proof that didn't need context, just eyes. The flash drive Victor left waited in my pocket like a coin I was finally brave enough to spend. My burner buzzed. Unknown. Back alley. Alone. Another, immediately. North Pier. Camera off. A third, a heartbeat after. Don't go to either. Blue van, Pier 3. I can't stop both. And Caldwell didn't text unless the floor moved. I looked at the sky and chose without asking permission from the part of me that still wanted to be liked. Pier 3, I said. Bring the fire. We pulled along the pilings until the pier numbers stenciled in flaking white matched the one in Caldwell's message. A blue panel van waited nose out with the kind of casual patience that comes from bad habits. Caldwell stood beside it in plain clothes, jacket zipped high, hair tied back like a quick thought. Her gun was holstered and her hands were empty and her eyes were not. Put the boat here, she said, voice low. And don't look at the van windows. We tied off. I looked anyway. 2 shadows moved inside, the kind of shift trained by hours in a surveillance car. Caldwell told the driver to take a lap. The van pulled away, tires whispering guilt. You set me up, I said. Not accusation. Just inventory. I set everyone up, she said. Then I saw the loft and heard the note and realized I'm the one being conducted. She glanced at Mara. You the kid. Mara gave her the same look I'd given priests my whole life. I'll take your blessing, not your hand. He's the kid, she said, nodding at me. I'm the bill. Caldwell almost smiled. Fine. The choir's house is coming down, but Reeves thinks he can crawl under it and come out baptized. He's on his way here with a warrant he wrote himself. Moretti's sending DeSanto to meet me with a peace offering that has a bomb taped to the bottom of the box. Rico palmed his rifle and watched the end of the pier where Fogg makes promises. So what's our hymn? Make both of them camera shy, she said. You give me something fat enough to chew in a courtroom, I'll take the hit when Reeves tries to cut my legs. You give me heat now and I'll drag light behind it later. How do I know you won't trade the ledger for a commendation? I asked. You don't, she said. But you know exactly what they'll trade it for. We didn't have time to argue theology. Footsteps hit the wood at the pier mouth. 2 rhythms, then a third that tried to hide inside the first. DeSanto stepped from Fogg with a briefcase and a bruise blooming under his collar. Behind him, 2 of Sal's choir boys who didn't sing, and behind them, a figure who shouldn't have been there and always is, Sal. No entourage, no cigar. Just a man in a coat that fit like a secret. On the other side, a second set of footsteps approached. Reeves and a plainclothes with a kindly face precincts higher for when they want warrants to feel like favors. 2 paths, 1 dock, 1 city that loves to watch powerful men pretend they didn't bump into each other. Sal clocked Reeves. Reeves pretended he hadn't come to see Sal look small. Caldwell stood between them like a hinge that hadn't been oiled. Captain, she said without looking at him. Counselor. Detective, Reeves said. You made friends with the river rats. Sal's eyes found me. No hate. No warmth. Assessment. You brought your own choir, he said. Cute. Mara stepped just enough for him to notice. He did. And for the first time, I saw him hesitate, half a heartbeat, at the sight of the girl in the photo grown into a woman he couldn't invoice. I put the flash drive on a piling cap, the ledger pages weighted with a rusty bolt, the Polaroids fanned like bad tarot. Trade, I said. Rico's life, first. Then you both get copies. Then you both get to decide whether you like prison better with or without music. DeSanto opened the briefcase and angled it so we could see money arranged obediently. This buys silence, he said. He was wrong about the price and the product. Money's a leash, I said. I'm done being walked. Reeves stepped closer. You hand that over, he said, and I pretend your confession wasn't arson in a place with bad sprinklers. Here's my confession, I said. I killed a man who fed me when no one else did. I killed him because a butcher told me it made me family. I don't get forgiven for that. So I don't need your pretending. Somewhere a horn bellowed. Somewhere a gull decided we'd board it. The river moved like it always had, ignoring our small theater. Sal spoke to the water. You want to change the game, he said. Men say that when they mean they want to pick the cards. I want to burn the deck, I said. And I want you to see it. Rico lifted the rifle enough to exist, not enough to threaten. We doing this? He asked. The question aimed at me and the river and a boy who used to think respect was a door someone else had to open. I took Victor's phone and held its screen up. 9:07. 10 minutes until the city received the worst love letter it ever asked for. 10 minutes until the tide decided where the bodies went. I looked at Mara. She set her jaw in a way that made me feel brave and tired. "Captain," Caldwell said, voice steady, "step away from the edge." Reeves smiled like a donor. "You don't give orders here, detective." "I do," Sal said, soft. "On this wood, I do." He took one step forward and one to the side, and somehow it moved Reeves without touching him. Old math. Power that doesn't show its work. I cracked the Zippo and touched flame to the corner of a ledger page. Numbers blackened, curled, lifted as ash. Reeves flinched. DeSanto inhaled like I'd burned a painting. Sal watched the smoke and said nothing. "Copies or fire," I said. "Pick. But understand something. This doesn't stop after today. The money moves to the places Victor wrote on the last page. Youth centers. Shelters. Bail funds. The account numbers are in the drive. Your slush becomes groceries and lawyers you don't own. You still want the paper." DeSanto went gray. Reeves did the math of a man who sees his name in an index, weighs whether the footnote is survivable. Sal did what he always did, chose control. "Rico walks," he said. "And you don't die today." "Rico walks," I said. "And you learn to live with not being God." Reeves reached. Caldwell reached faster, putting her palm on the bolt that pinned the pages. "This is evidence," she said. "It belongs to a court." "You don't have one yet," I said. "You have a river and a morning and your name." We stood there like idiots with our truths out. Reeves made the first ugly move. His hand flicked inside his coat. Rico's rifle coughed once. The shot hit the piling between Reeves' boots, and the wood jumped like it wanted to get out of the way. Reeves froze, not because of the bullet, but because the act of being defied tasted new in his mouth. "Next one's the microphone you talk into when you lie," Rico said. "Don't make me improve your speech." Caldwell took the drive and slid it into her jacket. She didn't look at me when she did it. "If you're scamming me," she said, "I'm too tired to care. I'll hunt you on my days off." "Then I better not be," I said. Sirens again. Closer. The van wheeled back around the warehouse and the pier became public. Decisions got heavier when they had to carry an audience. Reeves stepped back into fog with his badge already growing out of his pocket. He'd try to cut the tapes, to quiet the choir, to redecorate the truth in beige. But the timer wasn't on his desk. It ticked in 9E behind a typewriter and a cheap candle. Sal looked at me like a man who recognizes a new weather pattern. "You think you can starve me," he said. "I ate before you were born." "I'm not starving you," I said. "I'm making your appetite expensive." He nodded once. DeSanto closed the briefcase with a sigh that sounded like Latin for defeat. Sal turned and walked into fog with his hands empty and his coat unbothered. Men moved around him because men always do. Caldwell exhaled the breath she'd been saving since the loft. "Go," she said to us, not kindly, not cruelly. "Before I remember what my job is." We pushed off. The skiff took the weight and forgave us. On the water, city sound becomes one thing, a low wives' tale. Rico put the rifle flat and rolled his shoulders like a man learning they still work. Mara watched the shore as if she could read the future off its faces. 9:16. Victor's phone whispered. "You sure about this?" Rico asked. "Letting it sing?" Mara answered for me. "He's sure about what happens if it doesn't." I thumbed the phone, screen waiting for a pitch. Mara hummed the note, the one that would pull the fuse. I held my breath and did not sing. The timer flipped itself over like a fish deciding to be ocean. Somewhere, inboxes blinked open like eyes. In a newsroom, a reporter who owed nobody a favor sat up. In a council office, a woman who forgot how to be scared remembered. In a union hall, A man picked up a phone and decided to do one brave thing before lunch. In a precinct, a detective watched her inbox fill with the kind of fire that turns light honest and said, very softly, "Okay." We drifted under the bridge where we'd first learned how to disappear. The skiff rocked. The river kept its appointment with the sea. My phone buzzed one more time. Unknown. Cute. Choirs loud. You just painted targets on backs that don't belong to you. Sleep with your eyes open. S. Another, seconds after, from a number with a badge in it. No more bridges. Next time you walk in, we do this right. Or I start counting bodies with your name. And I put the phone in the river and watched it sink like a small decision. On shore, sirens braided and unbraided. In the fog, the city rearranged itself around new holes. Rico looked at me. "So," he said, "you changed the game." "No," I said. "We changed what they can win." Mara let the motor chatter us into the current that knew where it was going. "You going back?" she asked. "To what?" "To any room that thinks it owns you." I thought of a ring that fit too well, of a ledger dressed as a prayer, of a girl's photo winked into a woman's eyes. I thought of a cop who still believed that rules could be bent back straight if you heeded them enough. I thought of the freezer's breath, the crawlspace, the note that wasn't a word. "I'm going forward," I said. The city pulled its coat tight and pretended not to watch us go. Somewhere behind us, a choir lost its funding. Somewhere ahead, a youth center's lights came on early. The skiff hummed. The day widened. I put my hands on the gunwale and felt the river under my skin like a second pulse. The boss had said one job. He was right. I took it. It cost me my soul. So I stole it back and charged interest. And if I have to spend the rest of my life paying down what I owe to the dead to keep the living from becoming receipts, then fine. Let them count. I'll be busy turning ledgers into grocery lists and gun hands into open palms, and every time a man like Sal or Reeves tries to stack the deck, I'll light another match and remind them, the rules don't live here anymore. The fog thinned. The sun showed up late and unapologetic. We headed for open water.